guess what Dad cooked up for you? It's your favorite Amaco box. I know how much you love Amaco box, sweetie. That's why I pack it in your lunch every now and then, so the other kids won't tease you on the yard. On a serious note though, Amaco has sent us another box from the company, and I'm very grateful for it. Thank you very much, Amaco. We're gonna take a glaze out of this box, review all the other glazes, because I'm pretty sure it's a glaze, and we're gonna glaze review one of these glazes here today on the channel. Make sure to leave a comment down below to tell me which one of the ones that I didn't pick that you would like me to review next. You know, not to be spoiled, not to be picky, but usually these boxes come with a love note and a t-shirt, and now I'm starting to think that my girlfriend doesn't love me as much as she says she does. So it seems like this is from Amaco's new line of glazes, phase glazes, which are supposed to be the phase separation, I assume by the name. You know, they have a flux line and they have like a phase line, and usually for people who make glazes, this is terminology that we use to describe a certain type of activity or a certain type of glaze. So we have like phase separation glazes, or we have glazes that are high in flux, so they're generally a little more melty than other glazes. This, I assume by the wording, is the phase separation glaze line. So here we have Night Rain. We have Lunar Pink. We have 2 bottles of Teal Tokyo Drift. And it looks like we have 2 bottles of Floating Lavender. These 2 are doubles, which is nice. Thank you, Amaco, for sending me doubles. We're only gonna need 1 of those per episode though. I think right now we're gonna choose in between Night Rain and Lunar Pink. You know what, honestly, just because I never do glazes that are kind of pinkish purplish on our glaze review playlist here on YouTube, we're gonna do Floating Lavender. For now, I'm gonna put them to the side, and whichever one you guys say is the one that I'll probably test next. Let's see what we got in the pile over here. Yeah, oh, watch out for that. Yeah, okay. In today's glaze review, we will be testing an Amaco glaze from the Phase Glazes line at Cone 6, Floating Lavender PG-55 on white clay, brown clay, or redstone clay for a lot of you aficionados out there. We're also going to use a mixed porcelain clay body just for the heck of it. But as you can tell, I did drop this on the floor at my job, so I fired it for a glaze review test. So these are the 4 things we're testing Floating Lavender on today. And with that being said, let's get going. Oh, okay. Cool. I don't think I really talked about it, but the reason I'm choosing this one specifically for the redstone clay body is because number 1, there's a crack inside of it, and number 2, there's a design on the front. So I want to see if I can see this design through the glaze, just in case. You know, you always got to test it. I've added about 50 milliliters of water to the glaze, just because the glaze was so thick when I first opened it. But almost every other glaze review I've done on the channel ever, I make sure not to add water to the glaze so I get consistent tests directly from the company. But I've received lots and lots of people telling me, you can just add water. I know you can add water, I just don't want to mess up the test for you guys watching the video. But as far as I go, personally, I usually add like this much water to almost all of my Amaco bottles of glazes, because some of them are really thick. You can't blame them though, they are meant to be used as brushing glazes, and, you know, I don't really brush that much. And while I do pour and dip most of my glazes, I do want you brushers out there to have a fair shot. So let's make this extra test tile I found in the background a brush test. We're going to put on about 4 coats here. Now this is our last test tile here. This is our porcelain test tile, and I don't really know what to do with this. Ooh, you know what? I know what to do with this. Let's make a base glaze in the floating lavender, and then let's put it on my Gara's Red recipe. My Gara's Red recipe just got released to my patrons. It's not public, it's patronized. I gave it to my patrons. But it's a pretty good solid red recipe if you treat it correctly. So let's do the first layer in this floating lavender. Of course, we're going to pour it in because we already did our brush test tile. Cradle it like this and kind of cement mixer it out. And if you do it correctly, it might drip a little bit, but we should get the entirety of the inside without brushing. I also want to dip a little bit on the top because I'm definitely going to dip the entirety of this thing into the Gara's Red bucket. So let's do about that much. That's a good job for the rim. It's a good rim. You know, it's a good job I did on the rim. I don't want that to be misconstrued in any other way. I just want you to know I did a good job. Some of the newer subscribers on my channel often see my glaze reviews where I pour stuff like this, and I get a couple messages online of people asking about my results and they want to see more pictures, because I get deeper results usually, but they often ask me like, aren't you wasting glaze? It's not really a waste, because most of the time I'm putting it right back in the bottle. So I do get a little smidgen amount, like this much on the inside, but I pour it right back in. And also I'm getting much better color than I generally do when I brush, and for most people that brush. What's really happening is I'm putting on more layers at once and I'm saving a bunch of time. It would be equivalent to you brushing like 5 layers on a pot, except for I just do it all at once. It's my variation of dipping, I guess, from a bottle, right? So you're not really wasting glaze. You're realistically just putting on more layers and getting better color as a result. And I think at the end of this episode, you will definitely see the difference in between this right here, which is brushed on, and this right here, which is poured on, and you will definitely see which one has deeper color. Okay, and as we usually do, let's go over what we're putting in the kiln before we actually fire it up. These two are our base tests. This is a white beam mixed with grog stoneware clay body. This was poured on, and I cleaned the foot fairly well. There's a good amount of space down there. This is going to be interesting because we get to see how well this glaze runs with that amount of space at the bottom of the foot. But this is going to be our standard white test tile. This here is going to be our standard red stone or brown clay test tile. This is red velvet from the Amaco company. It does have a design on it somewhere, and you might be able to see it barely right there through the clay body. The reason we're testing it on this clay body is twofold. Number one, I want to see if we can see through to the glaze and see this actual image on the clay body. That would be super cool if so. Also, this is a red stone clay body, so we're going to be able to see how it performs on a red clay body. For you brushers out there, this is your brush test style. This is a stoneware white clay body. This is technically dragon fruit, if you can see the little bits down here, but I want to see if this phase separation glaze does anything on a dragon fruit clay body. So this is 4 coats of floating lavender from Amaco on this. So these two will be compared. And for your last test style, you are getting floating lavender with Donte's Gara red on top of it combined right here. Keep in mind that some glazes work better under and over other glazes. So I dipped the entire thing in the floating lavender up to about right here, and then I re-dipped just the outside, inside still floating lavender, just about here. So this is the only real combination spot, and I did that just in case it runs a little bit. So these are all of our testers that we'll be putting in the kiln today. We will be firing these all at cone 6 oxidation with no hold. It's straight up, straight down natural cool cycle. And with that being said, let's put them in the kiln. Okay, now that everything's out of the kiln, let's take a look. This one is PG-55 floating lavender on a B-mix test style cup. You know what's crazy about Amaco glazes in general, and I've been thinking about this for quite some time, many of them are super stable, even though the line that they are kind of in assumes that they wouldn't be. Like, phase separation glazes like to be thick, and because they're thick, oftentimes they're not stable, because you have to put on extra layers of the same glaze in order for them to come out the way you want them to come out. I poured this on, you saw me pour this on, and it still came out exactly where I put that line. And you can even see it dripped a little bit right here, but it stopped right there. That glaze line is standard straight. I mean, it's not going anywhere. And you can see there's spots where it tried. Didn't do it. Didn't do it. This is good for a first impression from this glaze, mainly because, and many of you know that I pour my glazes on, but realistically, I'm just putting on more layers. So where the suggestion on the bottle is, 3-ish layers of glaze, I'm essentially saving time by putting on 4 to 5 layers at once instead of brushing 3 coats, getting inconsistencies. I just pour it straight on. But I love whenever I do this and I get the color that was promised to me on the bottle. This is exactly what I expected. This is what the company is showing me. This is what I'm getting. This is what I bought. I like that. What's more is that if we check out the red clay test style, we have a couple of surprises. This is a redstone clay body, actually it's red velvet from the Amaco company, with floating lavender on it. This is also one of my favorite things. I love when a company gives me a glaze that comes out how they say it'll come out. I love it even more when I get a different variation of the glaze on a darker clay body. And as most of you probably know, there's very little chips or test styles out there with the white and the red clay body, if not even the black clay body comparisons. I think we've all seen those chip walls that companies like to make. Almost every single time you're going to see some type of white slip cast clay body. And that's because that's what most people pick up. For people like myself who use red and darker clay bodies, we like to know that a glaze will work in a different way but come out similar every single time. So I love that I got this variation right here, a little right here, and the biggest surprise out of this is I can see this underglaze pattern from the silkscreen that I put on through the glaze. This is not very common of glazes this thick. And keep in mind, I did pour this on. but the fact that we can see our image of our underglaze through this tells us that this is relatively underglaze friendly. Albeit, I can only see about 90% of the pattern, but I expected 0%, so it's really good to know that I can see any texture or any type of images through this. Now our final test style is a brushed on variation of floating lavender with a dragon fruit clay body. This is brushed on about 3 or 4 coats and they were all fired at cone 6 oxidation, but the one thing I want you to see, which is obvious now, is that you can very easily see all the little specks from dragon fruits on the clay body through the glaze. For those of you who don't know what dragon fruit is, it's essentially kind of like sandstone buff when you leave it raw, but it's a porcelain variation of it. This is basically porcelain with a little something something in it to give it these specks. A lot of people like to do what I call raw work by leaving a portion of the clay body raw so you can see and feel this beautiful clay body texture and the nature behind it. That also means you can see these little specks through this glaze. If you can see that underglaze through it, you can definitely see the specks through it, which means any flaws on your clay body will not be covered up by the glaze. You're going to have to wipe those down, and this is something you ought to know with this glaze. You can, however, see all of my brush strokes here, the unevenness of them, but that's the reason why I pour on most of my glazes, is I don't have brush strokes here, because I didn't brush. Now this is floating lavender on a very random and strange clay body. This is about 3 different clay bodies mixed together, but it's generally a white stoneware mixed in with a little bit of black. This is my Gara's red underneath floating lavender. Not that good. Not gonna lie to you, not that good. It's not a commentary on the glaze itself. It's just that I don't think these families of glaze get along very well. I do not think a lavender type phase separation glaze and a standard tomato red like each other chemically, if I can say that. I don't think any of these would make a good combination in any world. No matter how many red glazes I develop, I don't think this brand of phase separation glaze would go well with it. I just don't. Furthermore, this is a hodgepodge of clay body. I mean, it's made of 3 different clay bodies. There's a crack down the middle. My symbol on the bottom is trash catch'em. It's just not that great. Well, thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today for the glaze review of PG-55. I know we normally have more tests than this, but this time I did the standard, the white, the brown, and an extra brushing test style with some funny little clay on. The thing I really like about this glaze is that I am hand over hand getting the color that they promised me on the bottle. And the pleasant surprise is that I'm getting underglaze transfers showing up through the glaze, which is great, because most of the time you see something this kind of opaque and this kind of thick, you think to yourself, nah, there's no way. Yes, there is way. That also means, though, that any flaws that you see in the glaze body or any textures or anything like that, including special clay bodies like that pumpkin spice variation of sandstone buff, like this, is essentially going to show through, and you ought to be wary of that. Well, thank you for joining me today. Remember to click all those YouTube buttons, comment down below for which phase separation glaze you would like me to review next from Amaco, and I will see you, Dirty Potters, next week.
Thank you for your patronage.